of Elul, that's Tetzvav Elul, it marks the Hilula of a really great rabbi. His name was Rabbi Nachman Betito, Zecher Tzadik Libracha. He was born actually in the year 1845. We're talking about 180 years ago from time of recording. And he passed away on the 25th of August in the year 1915. That's 110 years ago. Obviously, he was a great rabbi of the congregation. He was a Rishon LeZion, a chief rabbi of Jerusalem, of Israel. Chacham Bashi, very, very prominent position. It was one of the last, let's say, of the old Rishon LeZions of Jerusalem. He was one of the last ones before it went as a Medinat Israel in itself, respectively. He was, let's say, the Mנהיג העדה, המערבית בירושלים. He was like Jerusalem's Sephardi chief rabbi. Now, two different opinions when he was born. According to one place, it says 1845. Somewhere else does say 1846. Be it as may, he was born in Morocco, in a prominent area called Marrakesh, a place we've spoken about on various occasions before inside this series. There was many, many great rabbis that came from Marrakesh, and we have to point that out also. Yes, he would actually go on to become the 32nd Rishon LeZion, sandwiched in between two other great rabbis, Rabbi Eliyahu Moshe Panizel and also Rabbi Moshe Yehuda Franco. They were the 31st and 33rd Rishon LeZions, respectively, who would eventually be buried in Harazet in the Mount of Olives burial plot. And remember, Israel at that point in time was still under the Ottoman rule at that stage in time. It wouldn't last much longer, but it was like borderlining his time period in itself. Let's explore a few of the highlights of the great Rabbi Sal. Now, he was born in Morocco, in Marrakesh, in seemingly 1845. Heitaf Reish Vav. And when he was young, he would actually make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael with his parents, and they would live in the capital city of Israel, Jerusalem, over there. He would learn Torah at Talmud Torah, a Sephardic Talmud Torah inside the city, and I think eventually he would go on to learn in Yeshivat Tiferet Yerushalayim. Remember, we've spoken about that place on various occasions before in this series. It was a place where I think various different Sephardi students will go, and some of them will become very, very famous rabbis at a later stage. Now, when he was 22 years of age, he would get married to his wife, Rabbanit Zanilbol, and I think afterwards he would get married later on to Rabbanit Yocheved Vida Rusa, if I'm not mistaken. I think they would have 4 children, it's reported, over. And he had a great rabbi also. I think Rabbi David Ben Shimon happened to be his rabbi. I think mentioned about the Ben Shimon rabbinic dynasty on various occasions before inside this series. After he passed away, Rabbi David Ben Shimon, Rabbi Betito in the year 1880, remember at that stage in time being in his mid-30s, he would become one of the leaders, or the leader, of the העדה, המערבית בירושלים, the Sephardic community in Jerusalem also. Another great rabbi would, I think, pass away, Rabbi Elazar ben Tobo, I think in the 1886, another rabbi I was talking about before, and he would become, let's say, one of the Mishiv'ah Tovei Ha'ir, one of the, let's say, wise people of the city, of the Sephardic community, along with another famous rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Malka. Remember, we've spoken about both these rabbis before, on various occasions before. At that stage in time, Rabbi Nachman Betito would be about around 40 years of age. Now, I think come what the year 1892, Rabbi Yisachar Atzaraf would pass away. And this would actually mean Rabbi Betito would actually now become, let's say, the Mנהיג, the manager itself of the העדה, המערבית, the Sephardic community, alongside Rabbi Moshe Malka. The two of them will be seemingly partnering together to become the leaders of it. 1899, I think there was a robust debate in that point in time, which would lead people to go to two sides towards this prominent position. Let's just say people were supporting the two sides in itself, and I think at the end, in this robust debate, let's just say Rabbi Yaakov Shaul Elisha would also, I think, weigh in at that stage in time within regards to it. Now, I think come with the year 1900, only about a year or two later, Rav Malka passed away. I believe it's reported over, and this would mean, I think Rabbi Betito would head the place in itself. Now, it's actually interesting. Come the year 1904, Hey Tafresh Samach Daled, he'd become the Shimesh Ketzir Yerushalayim Meta'am Ha'ida Marabit, Beknisa Rishona Shel Tushbei Haaretz Yisrael, Shetusu B'Zichron Yaakov. So he'd get prominent position, I think, in the neighborhood of Zichron Yaakov in Jerusalem. And remember, this is 44 years before Medinat Yisrael would actually get established. This was. And remember, I think at that point in time, the position, I think shortly later, would, I think in the year 1909, after Rabbi Eliyahu Moshe Paniziel passed away, I think Rabbi Nachman Betito would become the Rishon LeTzion, the chief rabbi of Israel, I believe. I think he'd been in this position for a few years, modest few years, until 1911, it's reported, over. And he'd be working also as the head of Jewish court over there. He would, I think, form a new Talmud Torah inside the city for the Sephardic community, head of Jewish court, the Ab Bedin, as they say. I'll be working for the congregation as a whole in Jerusalem. That was a turbulent time period across the entire world because the First World War broke out at around that time period, and that would lead to huge changes, huge effect on the Jewish community and for everyone as an entirety and as a whole. So that would be very disruptive for everyone at that point in time. He passed away, I believe, in 1915. He was about 70 years of age. Naturally, Tet Vav Elul, which happens to be tonight at the time of recording, happened to be his Hilula, and passed away 110 years ago. It was the 25th of August of that date. And it's actually written on his Matzeva. I'll state over what it says over here. It says, Sion b'mar tivkev Yerushalayim, titen kola al ha'i shofra d'baalei ara, d'rubkata d'oretat tzadik va'anav, meducha b'yisurim omed b'peretz Yerushalayim, rosh b'nei marva, b'rishon LeTzion, harav hag'on, המפורסמים, כמובן Rabbi Nachman Betito זכר צדיק לברכה. Now he left us with some great Torah books also, we have to point out, including was the Shemot Ma'am Lo'ez. This was one of the books. It was like, say, a gathering of I think using the works with Rabbi Chizkiah Shabtai, I think in Ladino, and it would become into 2 volumes. This book would be afterwards. Then there was another book called the Takfo Shel Yosef, which was Targum on the book of the subject, the Mechirat Yosef, respectively. And once again, it was connected very much to Rabbi Yosef Shabtai Prachi. Once again, it was written in Ladino, and I think through Rabbi Chizkiah Shabtai. And I think various different Chidushei Torah was written inside the kibbutz, let's just say, the kobetz of Torah Metzion, respectively. Now, let's explore some of his family life, and we're going to go on to a few of his family members inside a minute. They actually really make a mark on not just Israeli Jewry, world Jewry, and it's a world in of itself. One of his son-in-laws was Rabbi Nissim Ohana, we're going to speak about in the next few minutes. He would go on to become the chief rabbi of Aza. Rabbi Nissim Ohana will be, and we're going to speak about him. Another one of his son-in-laws was someone named Avram Ben Yair, who was, I think, got married, I think, to Jinta, I'm not so sure, but he was, I think, a tradesman, and he lived in Khan Yunis, famously enough, in Aza also. And after he passed, yes, that is very, very interesting. That was one of his son-in-laws. Now, another one of the family members was someone named Miriam Markadash. I think, very much connected to Rabbi Betito. Rabbi Nissim Ohana was, I think, one of his son-in-laws also. He got married to Rabbi Nachman Betito's daughter, I believe, Rachel. And remember, Rabbi Nissim Ohana, another one of the great rabbis in history. Another one of his grandsons, Chaim Ben Yair, who was, interesting enough, he would actually have, we're going to speak about him in a minute, he would also become a key figure, as I say, in Medinat Yisrael history. Another relative of his was a famous sofer, a famous scribe in Arabic and Ivrit, Chaim Ben Zion Victor Betito. He actually had been, I believe, from Mitzrayim, also respectively, which is very, very interesting. Yeah, so more can be said within regards to that. Let's just say a bit more within regards to, we know that he was born in Marrakesh at that point in time, Rabbi Nachman Betito. He was learned one of the greatest Sephardic yeshivot in Jerusalem, and he was obviously very close to Rabbi Chizkiah Shabtai. That would lead to the formation of the famous book, the Ma'am Lo'ez, and obviously because of the, it would be very, very interesting. I think we spoke about that he was chief rabbi also, and be like a head of his Sephardic community also in Jerusalem. I think from Hafei Shvat it was in Hey Tafresh Samach Tet he became the Rishon LeZion, and that would go on to the 5th of Cheshvan, Hey Tav Reish Ayin Hey. And so then shortly afterwards he passed away. Chaim Ben Yair, who was also related to him, I think was his grandson, was an activist in the Sephardi community in Tel Aviv. He was a pioneer in redeeming the Negev lands in the Eshkol region also. He lived between 1911 till 1998. He was about 87 years of age. His grandson was a famous person, and he was also a trader and an account manager, I believe, also. Now, another one of his the son-in-law that we spoke about before, was a great rabbi named Rabbi Nissim Ohana, who he said would become a chief rabbi in Gaza. So let's speak about him just for a minute. It's actually interesting, just using from the Aish HaTorah website over here. Very interesting article. We're not going to state over the whole article about him, but we'll use a short snippet with regards to him. And I think Rabbi Nissim Ohana would actually arrive there at that point in time. And when he would get, I think, to his journey to Gaza would be an interesting one. He actually noticed that the Jewish people that had passed away were being transported by donkey to Hebron for burial. Rabbi Ohana raised funds to establish a local Gazan Jewish community over there. He constructed a mikveh, a ritual bath for women, and an elementary school, a Talmud Torah also. That's very interesting. This was Rabbi Nissim Ohana. And then more would actually happen at that point in time. His school was unusual in that its exclusive language of instruction was Hebrew, and emphasis was placed on knowledge of the Torah itself. He brought teachers from Jerusalem to ensure that the children had a high quality education. And very interesting enough, Eliezer ben Yehuda, obviously one of the famous Zionistic figures in Jewish history, he was a pivotal figure of the birth of modern spoken Hebrew, visited the school to pay its respects. The Talmud Torah was not the most unusual of Rabbi Ohana's activities. Remember, this is the son of Rabbi Nachman Betito. The Mufti of Gaza at the time, someone named Sheikh Abdullah El-Alami, was faced with a troubling religious challenge. Christian missionaries had established a hospital in Gaza City where, alongside impartial and necessary medical care, they were preaching the gospel to a somewhat captive audience. This may have been, I think, Al-Hiya Arab Hospital, established in 1882 by the Church Missionary Society of the Anglican Church, and I think it's still operating in Gaza today. Now, Rabbi Ohana, yes, he would actually come involved in really trying to kill work. Rabbi Ohana's wife was Rabbanit Miriam. She passed away in 1912 to Jerusalem. Yeah, so he would get married to Rabbanit Parlachana, who was a daughter of Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Ferreira, another well-known Kabbalist of his. It was very, very interesting. And then I think Rabbi Ohana would end up going to the United States of America in 1930, would serve as a rabbi for the Syrian Jewish community over there, very similar to what he did in Gaza, interestingly enough. And he would introduce everyday use of Hebrew in the community's religious school. I think afterwards, 2 years later, he would go on to return to Jerusalem. Remember, at that point in time, World War I broke out, and the Ottomans ordered all foreigners to leave. The rabbi had been born in Algeria and held French passport, which led to his expulsion to Egypt at that point in time. Now, it's actually interesting, we're talking about the Ohana family here, which connected to Rabbi Nachman Betito. They relocated to Alexandria, but I think just 6 months later, he was chosen by the Egyptian rabbinate to serve as chief rabbi of Malta. Very interesting. He fulfilled that role for 5 years. Remember, we did a video on this series about the history of the Jewish community in Malta. We did that some years back. We did that some months back. He would be there, I think, in Port Said until 1920. In 1921, Rabbi Ohana would operate the Hebrew language school, Zichron Moshe, which was also the first Jewish school in Port Said. In fact, the Zionistic leader at the time, Chaim Weizmann and Itamar ben Avi, the son of Eliezer ben Yehuda, who wasn't a rabbi, were guests of honor at the cornerstone laying stone ceremony. Very interesting. Now, Rabbi Ohana became a recognized figure among the Egyptian ruling class and was invited several times to tea with food. The first, the king of Egypt, in 1935, the rabbi was again called upon to a new position. He was the head of the Cairo Rabbinical Court, deputy chief rabbi of Egypt, which is very interesting. And now, Rabbi Ohana would go on to have 9 children, and I think this was in an interview in 2024. Then one of the children, Moshe, revealed that his father had met with another great rabbi, Rabbi Eliyahu Hakim, and Rabbi Eliyahu ben Beit Zuri. members of the Lehi Zionist underground group. So I'm not too sure if they were rabbis or not. I assume they were. Before the assassination of the British Lord Moyne as Secretary of State for the colonies, Moyne was a highest-ranking UK official in the Middle East at the time, responsible for enforcing restrictions in Jewish immigration to Israel and the land itself, in of itself, respectively. And the rabbi tried to dissuade the two young men from an act of vengeance, I think, what was unsuccessful, which we've spoken about before. So the Ohana family was very, very famous, especially in the Zionistic area. And it's actually interesting, Rabbi Ohana saw the foundation of the State of Israel in 1948 and would serve as a chief rabbi of Haifa for many years. I think, come on, 1962, he was 80 years of age. He passed away and was buried in Haifa Cemetery, the traditional Sephardic ceremony that was attended by a massive crowd of mourners, which was reported over. It's very interesting. We went on a tangent. We were speaking about, because it's a Hilul of Rabbi Nachman Betito today, on the 15th of Elul. So we're going on a tangent and speak about Rabbi Nissim Ohana also. I believe it was his son-in-law. Friends were a community here. We learned about famous rabbis yesterday. If you sent any of the great rabbi we are speaking about, please send me an email. I would love to get more information. If anyone's interested in watching these videos, please share these videos also to other people. And so please subscribe to the channel. We're near 7,500 subscribers. Wish you all a Shabbat Tov. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.